evening, Jette. My name is Henrietta Moravčíková. I'm the curator of this, or tutor of this course. I'm very happy to have you here with us today at the evening. We will start precisely at 6 o'clock. But as I saw you, that it was like impossible not to say hello. Perhaps have you your micro on, because we cannot hear you?
I had mine. Now
it's great.
Now it's working.
No, thank you very much, Henrietta. Now at least we can see it and hear each other, and it's a pleasure.
We established here such a
improvised
studio because our school is closed. So this is a kind of, well, it's a pity actually, because I recognize that you have had a kind of tour through Central Europe, but probably it was only a virtual one.
Yeah, both, I have to say, both. But we are going a little bit back into the virtual mode now, also here in Norway. So I think that applies for everyone. Sadly, hopefully, well.
This is really crazy.
Yeah. It goes in circles, right? So.
Absolutely. So, how was it? And you have been in Liberec and in Prague. You have been like physically.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That was a proper lecture. No, then I traveled. Yeah. Because we were also invited to the concert hall competition in Prague. So I combined that with the site visit as well. So yeah.
That's great. Wow, the competition. This is a
wish you luck.
Yeah. Thank you.
Big competition with all the important studios.
Yeah, that's a world championship. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start officially. The students, they're participants in our reflections on architecture project. Let me welcome you to our last meeting in this season. The meeting with Norwegian architecture. The project was this year part of the project, the Empathy in Art, which was supported by Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway through the EEA Grants. And I'm very happy and very proud that our last but not least guest will be from the I would say the most famous Norwegian office, which is the studio of Snøhetta. So let me welcome our dear guest, Jette Cathrin Hopp, architect, one of the leaders of the team. She's been active in Snøhetta. I mean, it's nearly 20 years. It sounds really like, well, for such a young lady, it's really like quite a bit of time. And I don't want to introduce Snøhetta particularly, because you are really quite famous, and I mean, our students are also familiar with the work of your office, and so I will leave the floor to you. And once again, welcome, and we will really we enjoy your lecture immediately. So the floor is yours, Jette.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Henrietta, and thank you for having me, for the kind invitation. I would love to be with you in one room, but let's make the best out of it this way. So I will try to share my screen with my presentation. Let me see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it works. Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you again for the invitation. And I understood you want to hear something from me, what I would have loved to hear as a student. This is, of course, a challenging task, but I will try to tell you a little bit. Of course, I will show you some of our projects, but also introduce you a little bit to our processes, to our people, and most importantly also to our values. And hopefully you will see that there is a kind of inner logic in between those different topics, so to say. It's not only about architecture as a result of, as you can see here, architecture as a social tool, so to say. So I will start, or let me please go back to the first image and tell you a little bit about Snøhetta. In the background, you can see the mountain Snøhetta. It is the second highest mountain in Norway, 2,039 meters. And since over 30 years, we have borrowed our name from this mountain. And what we say that Snøhetta is a place that nobody is from, but everyone can go to. And it says a little bit about our approach that we borrow our name from a mountain and not from a specific person or founding partner. So it's really about the collaborative and transdisciplinary way of thinking since our inception. And to summarize it a little bit, our work strives to enhance our sense of surroundings, identity, and relationship to others and the physical spaces we inhabit, whether feral or human-made. And this relation to this mountain, we kind of celebrate it every year, where all the colleagues from now to almost 300 colleagues of the studios around the world, we climb together the mountain Snøhetta. And we, of course, think about and discuss the future strategy, but also kind of, it's really about this physical gathering together and share this experience. It's also about the working culture, obviously. And we have studios in Oslo, where I'm sitting in today, and in New York. And over the last years, we have also built up studios in Paris, Innsbruck, Adelaide, Hong Kong, San Francisco. So by that, you can see them here. I hope I didn't forget anything. No. And these, it started in Oslo, but this kind of studio map that you can see here was built up organically. It was not a strategic necessarily plan for it. It was always project first. And I will kind of try to, when I speak about our projects today, link it a little bit what I said to the collective intuition. That is kind of the driving force in our practice. But also, as you can see here in our last publication, it's really about the integration of the disciplines, since we have architecture, landscape architecture, interior architecture, product and brand design all in-house here in our studios. And it's about the generosity and collective ownership in the processes, but also how it's kind of then transformed into the physical and built environment. And it's also the true belief that architecture can make a difference to society, to kind of, to make the, if I said in very simple terms, to make the, contribute to make the world into a better place. So really the belief that also architecture is about political space. And we are maybe associated mostly with our cultural portfolio all around the world. But when you look closer at our different architectures, you can see that there is not necessarily a one signature style. They all look kind of different, and that's why they are really born out of the contextual concept that are directly linked to the physical environment, but also the reading of the cultural, the political and sociological spheres, and trying to find the appropriate answers, of course, then linked to the different building programs related. But when you look again closer to those, you can see that there is a kind of, they are there are a kind of embedded a specific kind of generosity in those projects, because what you can also see that they are kind of based on a set of Nordic values that are linked to generosity, to accessibility, and also to democracy, meaning that these projects try to increase also space. They are inviting and that try really to foster that kind of collective ownership. So, and this we have very much embedded in our Nordic cultures, and when we work internationally, these are kind of the kind of value platform that we are working on internationally. So this kind of value is also, first of all, it starts with the people. It starts also with the own working environment. And this is an image of our studio in Oslo, and I'm sitting here and at the mezzanine. We are working in an old transformed harbor shed close to the fjord. And what you can see here is an open space, and this kind of working environment which we try to have in all our studios all around the world. It's all a horizontal distribution of space. Everyone independent from the position in the office has similar square meters. So what we do every second year, we swap seats. So those people who had a window seats then get a darker spot, and we are not organizing, and I would speak more about that ourselves according to projects, but more that we get new neighbors so that we really get to know each other better. And the same applies for this kind of lunch tables that we also have, because we have in all our studios, we have a chef who's preparing lunch for us, but it's also about really get to know your colleagues better. And for some years we said it's not allowed to speak about architecture in the lunch, but really try to get a little bit under the skin of your colleagues. So what I mentioned earlier, that we are not organizing ourselves in the sitting according to projects, is that also a true belief in an informal distribution of competence. Meaning, for example, when you work on the green project, you have to walk through the space in order to communicate with your teammates. And by that, you will get a lot of information on your way, meaning you might stop at another colleague's desk if you see something that could be relevant for your project. So by this kind of constant movement, we see there's a high level of competence and information distribution. Without that, we have specific systems for that. So this is a really useful way of sharing knowledge and between the colleagues. Another term that is also directly related to working processes is some vocabulary and some terms that we have invented throughout the years. One of them is transpositioning, meaning one is that we work very much in teams internally, but of course we try also to include our clients into those processes. And what this specific term means that we try to, it's a working method where participants are invited to break out from their professional rules and switch perspectives with others in the group. And by releasing ourselves from disciplinary convention for a short period of time, we can foster a greater sense of possibility, free ourselves from habitual thinking, and build empathy for others involved in the process. And then, like you, for example, see in an orchestra, where they rehearse on each other's instruments. And by doing that and then entering back to the group, they have a higher degree also of empathy according to the other team members. So that's how we try to work and increase the space of possibilities, but also foster the thinking outside the box, which kind of leads to the innovation that we are striving for. And also when it comes to collaborations, one thing is the internal collaboration, but we also organized a lot in collaboration with external partners, One part are related to the building industry, but also a lot of with academy, for example, client bodies or other stakeholder organizations, really to bring all the competences necessary to the table when working with the different processes. So you might know this quote, but it's really about the quality of connections that is the key to the quality, and also at the very end then to innovation. So at Snøhetta, we have also been part of a research project that was conducted here in Norway over a period of 4 years, where Snøhetta, together with other completely different companies of other industries, were followed with the objective to find out whether there are processes that lead to innovation independent from the professional background. So there is this publication, it's called Idea Work. And what these findings was that there were identified 12 creative drivers that have to be present when innovation happens. And we use this publication also to post-rationalize, so to say, our processes a little bit. So we invented a kind of concept workshop, what we call it. And I know a lot of people have a lot of companies and university have workshops, but this workshop that we kickstart any project with follows a very clear sequence, and it's based on 3 of these drivers. The first is the so-called prepping, meaning imagine you are a project member or a client, or so we start the project by spending 1 day here at the office. So it's of course about getting to know get to know the project and the program better, but it's also about, of course, teamwork, but it's also about kind of establish the different levels of relationship. So the first sequence of this concept workshop is about prepping, so it's about sharing information of the project, but then part of that prepping is also a small work session where we divide the teams into smaller groups, where we on a very associative level, discuss the project's values based on these sets of cards. What represents the project and what does not represent the project. And by this discussion in smaller group, we already starting to discuss the content. It's not about architecture, it's really a content-driven approach. And then we go back to the group and present those findings to each other. And the second step, and the second creative driver, is the so-called zooming out. So we use that knowledge that we establish within the smaller teams, and we take one term that we consider is representing the project, and we take this term and try to build, and this is the third creative driver, getting physical, to build a physical representation of that content, so to say. And in all our workshops, we have these, in all our studios, we have these model workshops that we also use then in our concept workshops, as you can see here, where we then invite our clients and teammates and so on. And we build this kind of conceptual springboard, as we call it. And here you see some photos of the different workshop atmospheres, and also when you go back and present to the team. And here you see where we also exported our concept workshop into a client's factory. And what you can see here, it's really the what we call the conceptual springboard of a project. So it's again, when you remember what I said about this kind of style, signature style, it's really coming from the content, the core values, the core idea of a project. It's not about architecture at all. So why are we doing this? Because what we can see when you at a very early beginning contribute to the birth of an idea, you also want to see this kind of emerge further. And sometimes we also invite critics into these startup or concept workshop, also then just to onboard someone, especially when we have complicated projects that have a lot of different stakeholders and interests involved. So it's also a very good tool to create a kind of consensus around a project, and in a very playful way, but quite serious at the same time. So these conceptual springboard, just to show you some examples. For example, our first project, the Alexandria Library, was kind of born out of this idea of a microchip, and you are too young maybe to have this as a clear reference, but the first computer chips, the microchip, as a representation of the world's knowledge, was kind of the basic idea for this library. And another one is that we established the visual identity for the Norwegian national parks, where we have 19 here in Norway. We use this symbol of a portal just to increase the consciousness when you kind of enter these national parks. It's about protection, but it's also to create this collective ownership, and these portals are then, you will find them everywhere on the visual identities. So this was about a little bit about the point of departure, so to say. It was about people, the process, and now I would try to hopefully demonstrate a little bit how this is also then taking further into our projects. And I always like to start with the National Opera and Ballet in Norway that you might be familiar with. And this building, why I think it's a good example of our approach and our value, because it was, of course, a competition for a national cultural monument, a culture building, a national opera. And it was an open competition. And part of the brief was also to, really to create actually a vertical monument to represent a kind of landmark building. It was also a part of a big urban transformation. So it was the first building in this part of Oslo, an industrial harbor. What we tried with our approach was really the reading of the context and turn the site into a social monument. So really making this site accessible to everyone, independent from any ticketing area, really to use the ground twice. At the one end, of course, it has to, it is the home of a state-of-the-art cultural building, the opera, no question about that, but this was really to work with this added value. That was for us and really make it into a public space per se. And again, to explain a little bit better this kind of cultural context that we are working from in Norway and also in other Scandinavian countries, we have this so-called right to roam. The right to roam was established in the 1950s, and it is a right that, independent from private property, you're allowed to move freely in the landscape. So you can put your tent everywhere for there's a limit of 3 days or so, but you have to keep a specific distance from a private house. But besides of that, you are freely allowed to roam within landscape. So this is a very strong embedded in the Nordic cultures. And so we try to, again, borrow from this intuitive collective ownership that landscape belongs to everyone, and to kind of embed this into our approach for the National Opera and Ballet in Oslo. So as you can see here, clear references to landscape, and also putting the most valuable materials on top of the opera, the white marble, and really create to establish this kind of both collective and also individual ownership with the building. And also to increase the public space into the building, as you can see here, the foyer as a natural extension of the outdoor space, because we have very harsh climate. Today it's actually minus 12 degrees already. So it's really also about the public interior spaces. And we negotiated with the opera to have extended opening hours, and you can use the toilet freely. And also, for example, the choice of materials, as you can see here, we try really to work with a material palette that was quite abstract and also has references to the landscape. And the wooden wall is the kind of the transition between the public spaces and the theater spaces. So the core interior spaces of the opera. As you can see here, this kind of like the outside of a tree, and the closer you get into the core of the building, the more refined the wooden surface is. So here you can see a view from the balcony back to the fjord and the different staircases. When you enter the big theater of the opera, it's about 1,400 seats. The treatment of the wood is very, very refined, the smoked oak, as you can see here. And also all the integrated art pieces is related to this kind of overall understanding of the building. As you can see here, the crushed or the lookalike crushed aluminium curtain of the American artist Pei. But the closer you go, you see it's really it's a weave, but it looks really like this metal foil. And also this is kind of taking further on the roof, which is also an artist's project, and it's really about accessibility for all. It's really an inclusive project, and of course we love those images when you use it for your so it's really a very versatile building, and on a beautiful spring and summer day, it's really a lot of people are visiting our building. And as you can see here, to me, the opera performs at its best when you can have opera inside the building and open air concert on top of the roof. And the same kind of understanding of public space, you will also find similarities in the next project that I will show to you, the reconstruction of the Times Square in New York, where it was really about giving this notoriously congested intersection and the traffic space into a pedestrian-only space in Manhattan's core. And I think what is also very, I can stop here maybe a little bit. What is interesting for me, at least for this project, it's not only about, of course, most importantly, the transformation that you can see here, but it's also about that a project can have a measurable positive impact on public safety, air quality, economic output. And it's for us a model of how the carefully considered design of our urban landscapes can improve the health and well-being of its users while providing an important space for democratic gathering. And you can see here we worked with this over quite some years, and you can see really how this the increased area of pedestrian area, but also how we well, it's not a very expressive design. It's really about reading and solving the infrastructure of the space, both underground, of course, but also on ground. So, for example, these benches that you can see here, we spend a lot of time to study how are people moving here. And imagine this is a space where it's the most visited public plaza in the world, 300,000 visitors per day. So we also looked at similar situations in New York. For example, the Central Station, there's one kiosk there, for example, and we saw that by having this obstacle in your way, by moving around an obstacle, so to say, you increase the level of politeness to your to the one moving along with the crowd. So we thought by strategically placing these benches that also include all infrastructure, Wi-Fi to provide both seating but also equipment for all these in situ performances that happening here all the time, that you can see here different types of them, that we really also increased the performance level of this space. And as you can see here, what is also interesting, that it also serves, I mean, this is like an outdoor foyer for all the different theaters that are here on Broadway. So for example, the live broadcast of the premiere of the Met Opera, or 3 minutes to midnight, all the light advertisement turns into the 3-minute light show. So it's also about changing the character and offering something different. So what we also do with all our, especially our public project, that we try to measures them according to, we call these post-occupancy studies, as you can see here, to really, what I also mentioned in the beginning, to really measure the impact of the project, and also, of course, to learn from them for other projects. So, for example, what is obvious is the decrease in pollution, but also what you will not maybe think about, the decrease in crime, and also what it means for the neighboring, the value of the retail areas. And it has a lot of impact that is not necessarily limited to the physical space. So this is also about the social sustainability of a project that we find very interesting. And another one is the Ryerson University Learning Center in Toronto. And this project is it's really about giving a space to the students who live on very, very tiny flats, and there is not a lot of reading space and rehearsal space. So this is really about giving study space to students. It's kind of a library without books. So we, again, in the true belief that the physical environment has an impact on our health, well-being, the quality of life. So we try, how should this building look like? So we try to borrow again from the different landscape qualities, and to create some environments that encourage students to interact in a different way, and offer a variety and generosity of space. For example, when you enter the building, you have this kind of 24/7 almost open foyer that also works like a small theater, and you see these kind of auditorium seats here. But it's really about the true belief that's like in Greece and the agoras, that the proper learning happens within the social interaction between the students. So as you can see here, for example, this floor that we call the beach, and this is the garden, and yeah, so that you have these different working environments that also then creates the different qualities of learning. And what we also see for this project, that the time the students are spending studying and reading has increased, and that is, one could link directly to this building. So again, it's really about the positive impact the built environment can have on our daily lives. Another example for this kind of focus on the public venue is the extension of the SF Moma Museum in San Francisco. And for us, this project is kind of, yeah, how can I say? There was this Mario Botta building, and our building is the extension behind, as you can see here. So it's really about a new art experience and gateway into the city of San Francisco. That is one thing, but also it's about no longer an inward-looking shrine to the art object, but that a museum of today must engage with the local conditions and communities in a proactive way. So it really has to offer something back also to the city context. So maybe some of you have been to San Francisco, because the cityscape is quite a hilly landscape with a dense grid. So by our building, it was really about also to increase the number of entrances. This was the, you enter the building here before, but we really wanted to make this as a part of the city grid. And as you can see here in this diagram, this was the former street entry, but with our new kind of ground floor that is more like an urban landscape, because it has to connect with different height levels in the city. We really have this kind of big carpet that connects to the different direction of the city and creates this public flow. And what you also can see, that this also almost a tripling of exhibition space. So just very quickly show you some of these new spaces. So this is the link from the Botta building to the new extension up to the second second floor, where we have all the ticketing and all these functions together. And then, as you can see, the different galleries for the different art exhibition, different themes. But I like also very much this section, because it explains very well the situation, how by the extension you have these different entry points. And also, as you can see here, how the interior and the exterior works together, and also the new facade material that is inspired in part by the waters of the San Francisco Bay, and it composes more than 700 uniquely shaped FRP, fiberglass reinforced polymer panels. So it also has the silicate crystals from the Monterey Bay embedded in the surfaces of the panels, which catch the changing lights. And also, as you can see here again, this direct connection from inside and outside. And also we have these free galleries, which I also think is very important, that have, for example, here the permanent Sarah exhibition, and it's for free. So it's not related to a ticket. And the same thing that you might recognize if you remember from the opera. So it's really also going into the negotiation with the clients and the stakeholders to increase accessibility in the proper sense. Yeah, see here a little bit this connection to the vertical garden that we have here. It's the largest, actually, still I think, vertical garden in the United States, where we have all the different local species at this wall, and also directly linked here to the sculpture garden. Another project that I've included today is the new now we go from San Francisco to Paris, just to have you with me on the route map. So we were commissioned with the new headquarters of the 1,600 employees for Le Monde, the newspaper Le Monde. And it's really it's really the project represents Le Monde Group reinvestment in its staff at a time where other media outlets experience a downsizing of their newsrooms, and their deep commitments to cultivating a vibrant public realm throughout democratic access to information and physical space. And as you can see here, it's located very close to the Gare Austerlitz, so it has quite a complex also urban situation, also in both in the urban fabric, but also in terms of the technical, since it's placed almost on top of a train station. But also, what is also interesting that when they decided or when they selected the proposal for the future home, it was directly after the attacks on Charlie Hebdo magazine's headquarters. So they really kept the belief in our proposal with the open dialogue with the city of Paris and its inhabitants, without going the different way, increasing the level of security. So just have that in mind when I explain you a little bit the building. So what was also interesting that the urban context, because we only could place all the foundation and the infrastructure due to this close relationship to the railway on two sides of the building. So this was kind of the existing urban regulation that you can see here on the left. And we tried, and for us, it was very clear by this distribution of volumes, the new home for Le Monde had to be one building. So we tried to reinterpret the current regulation and the technical possibilities. And what you can see here, what we did, and with the superimposed diagram on the right side, we really tried to create this kind of bridge that is so that you have, on the one hand, the building is bridging, that we are creating this public plaza underneath with the activated surfaces, but also then have this kind of distant viewing to it. And so this was an early illustration from the competition, but you can really see how this building also acts as a connector within the city fabric. So. And also the exterior of the building we envisioned it clad with a pixelated matrix of glass with varying degrees of transparency. This is a ground floor plan where you can see the different infrastructures, the cores, how they come down, and all kind of how this kind of plaza situation connects to the railway station. And this is the build result. So you can see it's really close to the competition entry, which actually applies a lot to most of our projects. Because, again, now I'm taking a detour to the conceptual finding. When you really create this kind of strong concept for your project, then you have also this kind of robust point of departure that also allows you for transformation, but still not losing the original idea of a building. So this also applied for example, for Le Monde. Again, this pixelated facades also inspired a little bit of the media world. And here, just to show you a little bit the buildup of the building, it's really quite a heavy steel structure that is kind of bridging. It has the weight of the Eiffel Tower, the Tour Eiffel. So just to give you a little bit an idea of the span and the different layers of glass, as you can see here, and also the different transparency, translucency, and opacity that we work with, just to create also this continuous surface. And also we have this public terraces on top of the building, so again this inviting character. And what you can see here, an image from the building site, and the big kind of steel trust that is bridging and the built result. Also, the outdoor area was quite important to have this inviting gesture under the building, and again the glass facade. So very much again linked to the competition entry idea. Yeah. Take it to another part of the world, to Saudi Arabia, because I think, of course, it's always easier when we speak about generosity, democracy, and accessibility in cultures that are similar to the one that where you come from, and where you share the same, well, social and political context, so to say. So, what happens when you come with these values to completely different part of the world where also the society works with completely different contextual setups and rules, like, for example, Saudi Arabia. So we were commissioned with the King Abdullah's Center of World Cultures. And to give you an idea what this means, it was about the first public cultural building in Saudi Arabia, it is about the first cultural public building in Saudi Arabia, which means that it consists of different cultural components like cinema, theater, museum, children's museum, education, public library, all programs that didn't exist in that context at all. So it was kind of a completely new, it was a cultural pilot in this sense. So we try, when we thought about that program in this context, we thought, okay, we have to find an overall concept that represents, as you can see here, the dependency of each other. And what you can see, like the Roman arch, where all the different components are interrelated. And the keystone that you can see at the top, this is the one that holds the whole composition together, and that's where we also place the Children's Museum, as you can see here in this rendering. So for us, it was also to find a typology that, again, represents this kind of newness in that context. And this is the built result. So again, you see how closely related it is to the initial idea. And it's also when you have these strong initial concepts, it's also easy to, or not easy, but there is an inner logic when you develop the sub-concepts, so to say, like here the facade concept, like the the lines on the stones. And here we also tested it in front of our own office, the steel pipes around the pebbles. And here you can see some images of from the building site. And also it was about, of course, working in that context as a woman. We were mostly women actually working on the project. And at one point they said, when we came down there also working on the building side, what's wrong with the Norwegian men? So it's also really about impacting not only on the project side, but also when it comes working in those social environments. And just to give you again an overview with the different components, and here you see a plan how the different programs are related to each other. They are linked together by a plaza, and in a plaza, and here you see the entrance, and all the different entrances from the museum, the theater, the library are kind of gathered here from that plaza. Some inner courtyards within the different pebbles here, as you can see here, or from the theater. The landscape on top of the monosurface, as we call it. And also we were commissioned with an exhibition design within the museum part of the project. And I don't know how many of you know the Norwegian painter Edvard Munch, who was part of the Expressionist movement, and a lot of his motifs you will not think that would be possible to exhibit within this kind of social context. But actually, we designed this kind of pavilions with the within the big the museum space, and as you can see here, for the first time, it was really possible to exhibit Edvard Munch's painting here in Saudi Arabia. So it shows also something when you really can. It's very subtle, but it's really about also impact social change, because this exhibition would never have been possible without the building. So it's really also being part of a larger journey. And from one context to the other, I take you again back to France, a project that we work within Lascaux, the International Center for Cave Art in Montignac. And what is this project about? And again, relating it to the accessibility of culture. So this was actually about, I mean, this area in Montignac in the Dordogne in France is really a mecca of prehistoric findings. It's also on the UNESCO list, and it has a high density of prehistoric caves. And the Lascaux Quatre is one of them. And the cave was discovered in the 1980s by some children that by accident fell into the cave, and it was also opened to visitors for quite some years, but then they had to close it down again due to that the paintings were destroyed by the occupancy of the visitors. So the idea of this visitor center was born out to really make this part of the history accessible to people again. And it contains actually an artificial cave as part of this experience, as you can see here. So in the background, you can see our project, and it's really related between two different types of landscape. The agricultural landscape that is typical for this area. It's actually not, it's 2 hours away from Bordeaux. And then you see this kind of dense forest. So it's really like, this is from the competition entry, it's really like conceptualized like scissors into the landscape under the ground. So we are kind of lifting up the landscape and making it, as you can see here, accessible again. So the whole visitor center is put under the landscape. And this is just to give you an idea of the complexity of this program. So you can see here it contains this artificial cave, and which is based actually on a very, very precise screening of the original cave with 1 millimeter precision. And this is a 3D model that is done by one of my colleagues. So it also requires a high technical competence to make this into a building, so to say, or part of this visitor center. So you can see here, it gives you an idea of the build-up, and also from the construction side. And what was also very interesting, that 25 artists spent 2 years of hand painting 900 meters of this kind of resin rock reproductions. So it's really about to recreate 1900 paintings. And also what is interesting, by this kind of very precise scan, we discovered a lot of traces that were not visible before. So it also, you can see, it's also kind of a contemporary piece of art. So I will lead you a little bit through this visitor experience. So start kind of by approaching the building, and then you will be taken off the roof, and you kind of relate yourself to the context, and then you are taken down to the into the building. And it starts with this experience that you go into the cave, and the temperature drops down to 16 degrees. So it's really about this, having the physical experience of the cave, even though it's a replica, but still it's really to get a sense and understanding, and to connect you to this part of the human history. And then by coming out of the cave, we have this kind of so-called cave gardens, as you can see here. You come back to the outside, so you relate yourself back to the context. You have the sense, you use your sense of the smell, the noises from the landscape, from the nature, the birds, and so on. And then we have these different exhibition spaces that also, as you can see, the material that is the concrete that is pigmented by local pigments, and you have this kind of very contemporary exhibition design that relate yourself to more modern times, so to say, and then when you've gone through this different exhibition, you leave the building again, and it's really like you can see here, it's really like this small light slot in the nature. So this understanding of the physical representation, and I will take you back now to the Dovre mountain, Snøhetta, and the same reindeers that are found in the Dordogne area in Montagnac are the same reindeers that you still have here in Norway. So there's also this cultural link in the different contexts. So this project is about providing shelter for observing landscape. It's the Reindeer Observation Pavilion that we were commissioned with for the Norwegian Reindeer Society. Yes, there is something like that, but it's quite important for our Norwegian context. So when we started with the project, of course, we thought about what is a shelter in this context, and this is Garpahuk to the left. It's a shelter for hunters and bonfire, of course, but it was also about the local craftsmanship, the wooden kind of art that you see here, and about local building tradition from this rural building that we borrowed the proportions from, and we try to kind of combine all the different aspects. You see, it's really this kind of rigid frame and the more soft organic wooden interior that are combined together here. And we build a lot of prototypes. As you can see here, we have this 3-axis robot in our Oslo studio, where we built a 1 to 10 mock-up. And we also were involved in the selection 1-to-1 of the wooden materials of the tree. And interestingly, what you can see here, the same 3D digital model was taken to the contractor, the builder of the project, which is actually the same company that also built the wooden balcony fronts in the main theater of the opera. So the building industries in Norway are quite connected and quite versatile, so to say. So here's everything is put on the truck for transport and then mounted on site, and it's really the wood is not glued. It's kind of old carpenter connections are used, so it's quite how can I say? It's kind of also kind of breathing, because it's also changing within time. So as you can see here on the more close-up of the material. So you can go here with your family, friends, you can stay here, observe the landscape. And this is kind of a miniature of a public building, so to say. We call this the keyless structure because you can go here, as I said, no one will throw you out. It provides you shelter and brings you kind of in this relationship with the nature. And it's also very much born of this prototyping that we use for the form finding process. And another example of that process-oriented development is the collaboration we have with the Norwegian American artist Bjarne Melgaard. And we have a lot of artist collaborations, as you saw also on the opera, but this is more a one-to-one collaboration because the commission was for him. A House to Die In was the title. So here it was really about the reading an artist's mind, not always easy, and really try to find a equivalent three-dimensional representation of an artist's mind and thought, which is not always so predictable. So also the typology that we ended up with was really very close to this thinking. So we never knew what will come out in the other end. This is the typology. It's really one of a kind, I have to say. And interestingly, this is also located here in Oslo, and this site is very close to the former atelier of Edvard Munch, the artist that we exhibited in Saudi Arabia. And there was a lot of protest against this project because there's an artist colony close by, and they didn't want to have this House to Die into their local neighborhood. Also very interesting. From a stakeholder group, you would expect more openness. They were actually acting quite conservative to this initiative. And just to give you an idea of the surface treatment of the outer facade, this old sugi that we use, a Japanese surface treatment of wood, where you burn the outer wood and then you get the a kind of weather protection to it. This was a mock-up that we have at the ICA gallery in London together with his art, as you can see. So it's a kind of this total artwork, so to say. And these are some illustrations of the building here in Oslo. We will see if this ever gets built, but we already have some offers from Austria to bring the building here and there. So we will see. But this is it's a very experimental approach, as you can see, but very interesting especially in terms of the unpredictable process and also what it leads to as a result. And I will close with some examples, or I would not call them examples, it's more development that is kind of based on our core values. Of course, as you can see, we come from this commitment to social sustainability, but over the last 12 years, we have also committed ourselves to the ecological sustainability. So we have gone out, and this is actually quite serious, that we will aim to make all our buildings carbon negative within 20 years. So this is quite a commitment. It requires also something from our client, obviously, but also from ourselves, because you might be aware of that the building industry stands for over 40% CO2 emissions worldwide. So our industry contributes quite seriously to the sustainability challenge that we are facing, and we really have to change our profession accordingly. So we have been organizing ourselves within partners in the building industry in the so-called Powerhouse Alliance. This is, I'm not sure if I didn't, but then I have to do it just orally. As you can see here, these are different project examples that we have realized and developed within the Powerhouse Alliance. This is partnership that we have with industry partners, it's with clients, it's with a contractor, it's with engineers, and with other research stakeholders and universities. And we have a common objective, a goal, that we are developing buildings that are producing more energy that they are using for building consumption and also for to tear them down again. And what is very important, that we also compensate for all the embodied energy in the material that are used within these buildings. This is maybe the biggest difference when you compare this initiative with other plus energy buildings. So it's really taking care of the largest carbon footprint that is related to buildings per se. It's not the consumption, it's really what is embodied in the building materials. And I will show you one building that we have under development. It's a hotel project that we are have on our drawing board at the moment, or for quite a while. It's located over the Arctic Circle. It has this fantastic, beautiful view, and the objective is that it reduces down to 15% of the standard energy use for our hotel. So Svart will be the first building to be built after the energy positive powerhouse standard in the northern climate. And you can see here it's located at Svartisen. This is the glacier. Here, Svartisen, our building site. It's really located on a very beautiful spot, but there's also no infrastructure here. So when working with this building, we also had to consider all the transport, the waste management, and all the infrastructural topic related to a project of that kind. So we thought about also that when we work in such a beautiful natural context, we really thought about a typology that doesn't look so permanent, so to say. It's really about something that doesn't leave a permanent footprint on the site. So we're looking at different animal species, as you can see, the crab, an animal that lives both on water and on land, and also on local building traditions, as you can see at the fishermen settlements that we have along the fjords, that are wooden construction, also these dry fish wooden typology that we have, especially in the north of Norway. So it's, again, inspiring into this typology that we developed here. And when we look at these typology, it's not only about the programmatic approach, also considering all the different parameters that has to do with the hotel. It's about the for example, the tourism, the shelter. What is discussing future luxury, for example? What does it mean for our development? Also, when it comes to the food culture, what all the different kind of topics that are related here. And when it comes to the hygiene, what does it mean for our project? So really changing also the consciousness of the different aspects. It's not only about the building; it's really about the whole environment around it. And also, for example, when you look at the energy consumption, that we benefit for this 24 hours cycle, because a lot of the most of the day, tourists will not be in the hotel. So how can the energy concept benefit from that, for example? So these are all aspects that are kind of informing the form-finding process. It's not something that you can do as an architect alone. You really are dependent on the competence of the other team members in the group, the engineers, for example, that because it's really about that all the decisions that you are taking are measurable and are impacting kind of the final energy concept again. So for example, when we optimize the form according to solar harvesting, as you can see here, it also requires quite a complex, again, digital competence in order to inform the design process with different aspects. It's not a question of beautiful and ugly anymore. It's really about that. It's really about hard facts, so to say. Just to give you an idea of the site plan here, and also when we discuss different foundations, this is now in Norwegian, but it's really about how, of course, concrete has some aspects that are good, for example, as an energy storage, but we really wanted to make a building that was entirely built of wood, also to reduce the CO2 footprint of the material balance. And also, again, when we worked with wood in this kind of quite challenging environment, because we had the water coming up and down, so the treatment of the wood was the type of the wood, and also that it's kind of robust over time, because we, of course, we want to avoid that you have to replace building components, even though this is calculated within the overall energy, the embodied energy, that the window you have about, I forgot to say that we measure about a period of 60 years, and of course a window might have to replace twice. So this is then counted double into the energy calculation. So again, when this is a very dry diagram, but just to give you an understanding of the full life cycle calculation, also what I mentioned, the replacement of some parts of the building that are calculated in. So it's the product state, construction state, the use, but also then end of life that is calculated into the energy calculation. Also, this is also maybe a little dry, but to give you an idea of the quantities, what you can see that the horizontal components have quite a higher impact than the vertical components, like the columns, so to say. So the slabs have quite a high impact on the embodied energy. And also what you can see as the other electrical installation, these are the PV panels, for example. But here they are also paying back. They have a high embodied energy due to the production of them, but they're also kind of paying back since they're also producing energy. So just to give you an idea here, the total energy consumption, and the gray part, that's the embodied energy. And when you compare it with an ordinary hotel, that we really reduce the energy consumption here, it's compared to an ordinary hotel built according to what is the standard today. So it really reduces the energy reduction with 86.5%. And what is interesting, these are calculations, of course, only, but we see with our other buildings that we have realized within the Powers Alliance that actually the performance when they're built is better than what we have developed here in theory, so to say. This is just an idea to see that we also, or an impression that since we are also working with our very integrated here in-house, so we also developed the visual identity, the color palette, and the wayfinding system. So it's very much born out this specific project. It's not about room numbers, it's about degrees where the rooms are, for example. So just to give you an idea that we work very holistically and also wherever it's possible to work also within all the disciplines that we have in Snøhetta. So this is the 360 design color coding system and key cards. So also working with all the communication disciplines that are related to it. And I want to close with this project that you might have seen. And this is a project that we were approached by two brothers in the southernmost point of the Norwegian coastline. This is about under and they came to us, the two brothers, and wanted to build with us the first European underwater restaurant. So to give you a little bit an idea how it looks like, and also for us this was a very new typology. Of course, we had built an underwater restaurant before, but again, what is kind of typical also for our approach, and you might have hopefully you have this as a takeaway from my lecture today, that we always try to increase, well, as a minimum, the functionality of a building. Here it's also working like a maritime research center for underwater life. It's not only a underwater restaurant, but it's also having this kind of inclusion of maritime biology, so meaning also acting as a research center. So this is what I mean by increasing the functionality, and not just have it purely limited to the initial thinking. So here you see the location of the building, so what is also for us interesting when we worked with the typology, it's like an increase of the natural coastline, also working with the surfaces of the building that allows also that it's kind of inhabited by the plants, the species underwater. And here you see some impressions of this interior, and also how it's kind of the view into the sea. And within this building, we designed basically everything from furniture to textile. As you can see here, we were allowed to work with this acoustic fabric. So the transition from above land into the water, and working with this kind of gradient. So really to have this kind of this journey, imagine it's 5 meters underwater, but I don't remember exactly how much above water, but really to enhance this experience from the transition from above land to underwater. So also, which is quite an important part of it, we work with the visual identity and the name of the project. So in Norwegian, under has this dual meaning. It means also underwater, but also wonder, under. So it's a wonder, but also then under. And as you can see here, we worked also with all the communication platforms, the internet page. So this is also the journey kind of starts already here. Before visiting the restaurant, you start the virtual journey already, within this communication platform, so to say. So for us, this is quite important to be able to work holistically, especially when we work with a destination development like this one. So when everything is kind of linked together, the physical environment, but also all the visual communications accordingly. And just to give you some ideas how we work with the fabric, with the industry partners, the gradient that I spoke before, also working and developing of course, the color palette, but also the fabric itself. So this is really custom made fabric. And also since this is located in the south of Norway, where we also have a lot of oil industry and also the building industry, the competence related to it, that kind of was used in the execution of the building. So without that competence, we might not have been able to build it at all. So it's really about the synergies within the Norwegian building industry, as you can see here. Again, earlier the opera, the reindeer pavilion, and here also then the oil industry and the transfer to building industry. Yeah, and I want to end up with this image, and yeah, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope yeah, it was a good contribution to your learning environment. Thank you very much.
Jette, thank you very much. It was extremely interesting. You provided us with such a big amount of information that we are really kind of wow. Yeah, I mean, now our students will now, our audience actually, they have now the opportunity to ask some questions, but as always, I will use my position, and I would like to ask, perhaps it's not a question, it's a kind of I don't know, I was nearly the whole lecture, I was thinking about the kind of relationship of architecture and nature, and also a kind of heritage which is included in the nature, but also in the cultural heritage, as you put this example of this beautiful project in France regarding this art paintings and the cave, and actually what is actually the right way to do the things, to put a kind of put the people outside this very precious locations and this kind of heritage, and to build a replica where you can really touch something, but you are excluded from the real site, or to enter the real site, as you do it with, or did it with reindeer pavilion, or with this underwater restaurant, or even with this new design for a hotel, which really touches the untouched nature. So I'm always somehow I don't know what would I prefer. What I know that it's impossible to conclude. Let's do it one way or another way. But this is a really kind of question we are facing, like the humankind recently. So when you look back at when you look at your philosophy of Snøhetta, so what is more, let's say, included in the philosophy of your office? What of these ways?
I'm not sure if I try to understand the character of your question, because it's obviously not. Maybe it's the best explained by this content-related approach, that we are not superimposing a specific style, but really trying to come from the core identity of a project. And I think also maybe it's about that we really place also experience in the center of our design, not only in the process, but also to kind of engage all the senses, physically and the body, how it's kind of experienced to our environment, also the natural environment, but also the built environment, and by that fostering social interaction. I don't know if that is a proper answer to a question, but I think also I don't think there is one answer. What we always try to do is by this thorough analysis, and also with this kind of open mind and collaborative approach, really really to find the most suitable answer to a question, so to say. So I don't know. We don't have any predefined answers when entering projects. Really it's kind of a journey always, but it's driven by this collaborative process and to try to maybe strengthen the sense of the place, so to say, by the built environment, like an extension, and allow you to experience something that you wouldn't experience without the built environment.
That's true.
So really, that's again, architecture is a social tool, right? How can architecture contribute to this increased or the consciousness of the experience? Maybe this is a better way to phrase it. It was a very abstract answer to a very abstract question. It goes into that direction. Yeah.
It was very abstract. Yes, that's true.
I think where Henrietta was heading with the question was also because in the project that you've shown, the hotel in the very inaccessible place in the mountains. So we were wondering, like, by building such a structure, do you need to build the infrastructure as well? Like you are touching a place that was untouched before. So how do you behave in such a situation?
Yeah, we also, as you say, we design all the different parts of the journey, the infrastructure, the boat that will take the visitor, that we curate the occupancy accordingly. This is on all the waste management. Waste management is also part of the overall energy calculation. So it's, of course, you can question whether it's better to not build in these contexts at all. This is also, of course, a question that we ask ourselves, but we think it's better that we are part of that curation rather than it's kind of inhabited by an uncurated population, so to say. Better we quantify the occupancy by this kind of very conscious intervention rather than just opening it up completely, if you understand or what I mean. So yeah, because sometimes it's not better to not build at all, because then maybe someone other will come with a much more unconscious approach. So but these are important questions that we're also discussing internally, and of course we also say no to a lot of projects.
And if I may, to continue with this topic, you were the ones who specified the occupancy. You said to clients that this is the maximum visitors who could come to the hotel. And did you make any research, or how did you specify the number? What were the inputs?
I mean, it started, of course, that that the ambition was to build the first powerhouse hotel. So this is kind of the overall environmental framework or ambition. So the client also committed to that kind of definition of ambition. So it starts from that. So then we of course, that's why I showed you some of the slides with the what is tourism of tomorrow? What is the kind of the traveler of the future, the guest, and how can we discuss kind of the contribution and the consciousness to the behavior of according to the environment. And by all these questions, we came to a maximum or a balanced occupancy that had to do with the number of rooms and the overall energy concept. So in order to be able to realize this powerhouse ambition, because that to create the plus energy hotels, we couldn't, of course, have 500 guests there. So it's about finding the right balance, the scale. And this has to do with the building scale, but also with the occupancy scale. So we discussed that very thoroughly with the client, of course, because it always also has a commercial aspect. So it was about balancing all the different topics parallel. But the overarching was, of course, the sustainability ambition, the powerhouse. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's quite a complex task. It's not very, because everything is quantified.
Yeah.
Every decision you make has an impact. So you have to track everything.
Yeah, and
which is also it's a very interesting architectural dialogue because it has a different rationale, so to say, because it's all you measure everything according to the overall energy concept.
Yeah, and it was quite, I would say, quite complicated research behind this project, and this would be perhaps a very, how to say, basic basic question, but quite an important one. The client was prepared to pay for this kind of research because this is not cheap. This is not only about like designing architecture or doing, let's say, investing the building project, but also paying all this, let's say, research that is somehow connected with.
But in a way, I mean, you work with more disciplines from the very beginning together. But to simplify it, we say maybe the whole development process, planning process costs maybe 10% more compared to an ordinary sequence process because we front load a lot that helps us to do less in the later stages. So it's a restructuring of a traditional design process with the different design stages, but all in all, maybe 10% more. But since the building, of course, you have to have a more long-term interest in your development, but it pays back because it produces energy. So the overall cost there will be a payback, but of course you have to think more long-term. So it sounds more expensive, but it is actually not, because we have less mistakes. We sit all together around one table. We work in one model. So using also all the technology available for the benefit of the efficiency also of the process. So it sounds more expensive than it is.
Okay.
Maybe I would switch to, because this was the ecological part of the project that you shown, and maybe I would switch to the more like socially oriented, because that was also a big topic. And I was just wondering, like, how much, like, how big was the part of your decisions in the projects of the opera house, or in the exhibition extension in the San Francisco, where you decided to add these programs that would be for free, like available to the wide public without paying for the culture. So was this something that the client requested, or was it your sort of like extra reconsidering the program of the building?
No, I think they were very much driven by our design. But of course, I mean, the opera, for example, was an open, anonymous competition. So the jury decided on that, on the overall concept, and then the increased opening hours within the foyer and so on. That was a more followed the logic of the building, so to say. But this was kind of, we encouraged the operator in the operating aspects to increase opening hours, because it's part of the DNA of that building to be generous in all aspects, and also then it's the kind of the brand of the opera now. So that goes hand in hand. But again, it's about this kind of architecture as a social tool. It's also about addressing these aspects actively. And we are in the lucky position that, of course, the opera, that was a competition, but the SF Moma, that was a direct commission, because it's a foundation. And there it's going in dialogue with the client and actively of course, include them in the processes as we do within our concept workshop methods, for example, but really also to actively address these topics. It doesn't come on its own. It has to. We are also the advocate of these topics, and when you work with us, we will also challenge our clients, and yeah. So, but it's in the belief that our profession also can impact society and also our buildings accordingly. It's a negotiation, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, we have also the first question from the side of our students. I mean, you have already touched this topic during your lecture, but anyway,
Yeah.
Student Alexandria, she asks, you have shown us various types of architecture. I have a question, probably not very simple, but would it be possible in one sentence or in a few sentences to summarize what unites all your projects, if they have anything in common? Well, do they?
No, I think I think to make it very simply, they are content driven, not style driven. That would be maybe the simplest way to, and I hope maybe some of the processes I share with you today kind of build up on this in this approach, and also, yeah. So this will be the core, if I should just summarize in one sentence, and they are based on the commitment on social sustainability. That's where it all started from within Snøhetta. And to add on that, it's also the collaborative nature between all the disciplines in the Snøhetta is also a driving force for our design, so that we have this interdisciplinary approach, the kind of seamless collaboration within the disciplines in all our projects, that also strengthens this values that we stand for. So, yeah. I hope that was
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to ask more, actually, touching the topic of the content, because for a few projects you had the analysis of the use of the space after you built your intervention. And I'm wondering if you don't have such a data for the project in Saudi Arabia, because that was very different situation than building in the European context. So if you know how much this, as you said, the first public cultural building in Saudi Arabia has influenced the sort of like wider context in this country.
Yeah, when we start with a building, for example, we managed that, for example, men and women can go through the same entrance. This was completely new. And also that women were allowed to drive within that area. Of course, now this building was opened in, over 10 years ago. But anyhow, a lot of has changed ever since. But also when you look at the programmatic approach, what performances are happening there at the moment, they hired a lot of forward-thinking directors, females also, and they are really driving. They are working with the programmatic part, the use of the building. We can see that's really going into quite a progressive direction. So it's really becoming a kind of epicenter of a new movement, also of a new generation, along of young decision makers that are working there. So it's, of course, it starts there, but hopefully we will see that it will impact more parts of the society. But it's really a cultural, in that context, quite a progressive approach. Also what you saw with the Munch exhibition, that would never have been possible without that building and this relationship to also the Scandinavian culture. Yeah. And also we saw, for example, they had delegates working within Snøhetta here in Oslo, coming from Saudi Aramco, and they required specific working environments, cell offices, and you saw our working plan. We have this open office, and then suddenly they saw it was much more fun sitting among us. So the representatives from the client also, they had one desk between our colleagues. This was also completely new. So really, and on a lot of levels, this project impacted not only what happened in the building, but also how people work together, men and women. Yeah. So, but we haven't done a proper study yet. But this is something we are measuring constantly.
Maybe someone in the future will do a complex research on how much you actually contributed to the cultural scene.
Yeah.
Well, I will again continue. We see quite clear how you do the, let's say, sensitive export of your Nordic culture and Snøhetta principles into different contexts, European, American, and the Saudi Arabian as well. But is there something you brought with yourself to Norway from those different cultures? Is there something what was inspiring in your work in Norway, for example, from abroad?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Actually, I have never thought about it that way because we are always used to work internationally. Of course, we are one of the few offices in Norway that work internationally. I think there's only a few others, and the other one is working most with hospitals and airports. Maybe it's this kind of openness related to that we always secure that we have quite an international staff. So we have 32 nationalities also working also here in Oslo. So we speak a lot of different languages. Maybe this kind of openness. And I don't know if I can say that something specific informed a project here in Norway. It's more that we always think global. We don't have a very national approach, so to say. So we always, I think, create these open architectures that are accessible for everyone. This more that it's kind of embedded in that attitude. Yeah, but it's an interesting question, and I never thought about it that way. It's always the other way around.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the meantime, we got another question by a student, Christina. I read what she writes. The idea of under restaurant has caught my eye. I don't want to sound critical now, but I can't help myself. I have to ask. Would you say that project is reasonable? That it really makes sense in relation to its location and the view? Because no matter how hard I try, all the Google results look so unreal, or there is nothing much to see except the visitor's reflection on the glass wall. I'd be more than grateful if you could recommend us some website with the real photos from there.
Oh yeah, well, I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. Of course, it's not our most sustainable project. That's no doubt there. But what I think for me is interesting, of course, how we work with this interdisciplinary way, really take care of all the aspects, but then also established, and this is something we did, establish this connection to the university, really to allow them using it as a window underwater to, we don't have that in Norway, to observe underwater life in this area, which is quite specific because salt and, how do you say in English, the two water types come together. Now, but you know what I mean, the salt water and the brack water. So there's special kind of underwater life in this area as well. And the specific website, I don't know what your colleague is referring to, but there's no specific website that focuses on one aspect. Don't think so. At least I don't know.
I mean,
maybe she wanted to see more about that marine research, but I'm sure she can find.
Yeah, I mean, the best way how to discover what's going on there is to visit, yes, to travel to Norway and see what's going on in the restaurant. But we have one more question from the side of our colleague Cornelius. It's your turn.
Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. I'd just like to ask something back to your earlier introductory slides, where you gave us an idea of how you springboard each project, where everyone works together and you've got this whole collaborative event. In your opinion, do you think it's possible for other creative disciplines to actually contribute to this architecture being created? So instead of being a team of architects and designers working together, you've got artists and creative directors and a whole different smorgasbord of creative people working together to create a project. So it's not just architects designing something. Do you think it's possible, or do you think it's a very naive way of thinking about design for our current times?
You're thinking about the working method, if it's applicable for other disciplines. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes.
Because what we do, we in these concept work, which we integrate a lot of other disciplines. For example, when we're doing musical, we invite musicians into these workshops really to get all the content-related aspects very early into the discussion. So so we expand the group of disciplines related to the specific topic that we're working on. Concert hall is a good example, because there we need a lot of different competence very early, even though we come from the content, but it might be some that a musician has a different thought on how the character of the tone, for example. So this can be a theme that influences also our thinking. So we try to think as holistically as possible, and also sometimes invite journalists or what we think is beneficial for this kind of thinking process in the very beginning. So we open up, and the richer the better, I have to say, because architects and designers are a little bit boring sometimes in their conversation. Predictable. But I mean, the clients makes the discussion, of course, more spicy, if I should use that word, because they come here and they are sometimes not used to these processes. We have CEOs coming in here, they have to take off their tie, and everyone is equal in these processes. But yeah, it's interesting what happens also to the people.
Yeah, perhaps we can continue with this question that you mentioned, that you invite critics.
Yeah.
So what kind of critics are these? Like architectural critics, or there are people coming from different disciplines, or I don't know, politicians, or
politicians? Yeah, sometimes we have these processes on a much larger scale when we work with urban developments, for example, and we take this project concept workshop with us to municipalities. So we have very complex groups that we are working with. So we use these processes also as a communication tool to establish a common ground for a large urban development project, for example. So we have to calibrate, or we use these processes to hear everyone out, because then suddenly you are able also to contribute, and instead of just only to criticize and stay as an observer. So we really try to include everyone, all the opponents, into these processes, and it's really quite helpful. And at the end, we often see that we manage to establish something, at least for from where we can start working. It's quite helpful. And of course, I mean, I forgot to mention these methods actually kind of come from our brand design projects when we work with a lot of, when we have to change names and identities of big companies. That's where we actually started with these processes. It's where we have to rename, for example, the Norwegian state railway company and give that completely different names. So these processes are also very helpful in this change of identities. And then we expanded them into architectural dimensions, actually.
So that kind of brings me to, yeah, because in many projects you mentioned the entire visual identity, the project identity. So does it come like hand in hand for you? Like to fulfill the goal, like you need to create this whole identity for the building, for the environment? Or how did you, as an architectural studio, how did you get to such a commission as designing identity?
No, I mean the brand design and the product design, those are the newest disciplines within Snøhetta. We have them about now 10 or 12 years. So we started with architecture and landscape, and then over the years we kind of we saw the necessity also to increase the disciplines to be able to answer on the holistic needs of a project. No, it's not necessary that we have always all the disciplines. I mean the visual, the brand and product design included. That's also a little bit up to the client what they commission. But these are the projects that we love to work on because we can use all our competences and yeah. But it's not a must, of course.
We have here, I would say, very last question from the student side, and it was probably inspired by the image that you have shown from the opera house. So with these guys on skiing down the roof, yeah. Because the question is like. If the roof is accessible also during the winter, and if it is not dangerous or forbidden to use it during the winter time when the snow is there.
Yeah, no, it was of course an intention to have it open during all seasons, but now we have to, because it's not heated, so we have to close it off at least part of it during winter. Yeah, because it's dangerous. That's the case. Because now today, for example, we have -11 and a lot of ice on the roof and the street. So yeah, then we have to close it off due to security reasons. But most of the year it's completely open.
But it's actually a pity because I mean it sounds very adventurous.
I mean there will always be someone on the roof, even though it's kind of closed off.
I can imagine, because this is really inviting. I said that this is the last question, but there are new questions coming, so I don't want to make you really tired. But okay, let's say that this one will be the last one. Yeah, but I mean we have already touched this, but whatever. Your projects are very complete, from urbanism to furniture. How long does it take to complete the project from design to realization? What was the longest of your projects?
That's a good. I mean, it depends, of course, on the complexity of the project and if there are starts and stops. But I think the longest, well, maybe it was the Alexandria Library. We won the competition in the end of '80s, and it was opened in 2012. So that was quite a long. Yeah. So there are. I'm sorry, 2001. So sorry, not 2012, 2001. So that took quite some years. yeah, I don't know actually what took it. It's really dependent on whether you start with an urban plan and then you end up designing and building parts of it. So there's not one answer to that. And then we have projects that are really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it always depends on circumstances.
Yeah. And there are starts and stops
Change
sometimes.
really rapidly during the process, of course. But talking about the library, it's like we've been just laughing because here in Slovakia during the communist times and even later on, it was like 20 years. It was quite normal to have it from the competition to the opening of the building. So it's
for the big public projects, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is the average time. Okay,
now,
so
the opera took 8 years from the competition to completion. I think that's quite, and that was all subsequent. There were no stops. That was one process. So that's, I think, quite fast.
Yeah, it's really fast for such a complex project, definitely. Okay, I mean, we have you for such a quite a long time. So I mean, we should stop now asking your questions. And I would like to thank you once again for being with us. It was really a great pleasure and very interesting. All the projects you have touched during your presentation. And so I would like to wish you good luck with all the other works. And I also forgot to congratulate you because I heard that you have just won a kind of award from the DC magazine regarding the
Sustainability Award.
Yeah, exactly. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope your research and also the design process will be successful. And once again, thank you very much for coming through the...
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and good luck with your studies.
Oh, thank you. And we will
hopefully you're soon back to the university again.
Yeah, I hope so. And our students, they will write reflections on your lecture and on the lectures of all the other architects. There will be a small book of it. So we will then come back to you with this like finalization of the project.
And send you the...
Yeah, of course, and send you the book. So once again, thank you very much and have a nice evening in Oslo. Bye.
Bye-bye.